Today's topic is demand. Demand is a very important topic, especially in terms of economics, and it is very important for economic decision making. For any business, there are three main questions or three main economic or central problems of an economy. That is, the first being what to produce, the second is how much to produce, and third being for whom to produce. So, these are the three economic problems to which a business has to find answers. And to find these answers, the first two answers can be found out if we understand demand. In order to understand what we should produce and how much to produce, we have to actually understand what is the demand for that particular commodity that we want to sell or we want to trade. Now, there are two important elements in the definition of demand. The first is ability, and the second is willingness. Now, ability over here means economic capacity. Whether we are able to buy that particular good or not. Do we have that economic capacity to buy that good or not? And willingness means, do I want to buy it or not? Do I desire to buy it or not? Desire and want are two different things. Desire is mostly something that we wish for, and want is something which is more specific and something that is more certain that we want that thing. So, in want, basically, there is no element of uncertainty. There is more certainty to this word of want. This is something more related to, you can say, necessity, something that we really wish to have, something that we will want to have, something without which our lives will not be easy, maybe. So, this is want, and desire is something that we wish for, and it is nothing to do with necessity all the time. It's mostly not with necessity. Now, in other words, we can say that demand for any commodity refers to the amount of that commodity that will be purchased at a particular price during a particular period of time. To understand these better, I'll take an example. Like if I talk about iPhone. So Apple products are something which are desired by most of the people. Now, that doesn't mean the production of Apple depends upon the desire of all the people, because if we ask to any random people whether they would like to have a Apple phone or not, mostly the answers will be yes. So the Apple company, they will not ask any random people and just ask them whether they desire for it or not. So what I mean to say is that desire is not the only thing that will be important for a demand. Along with desire, what is important is the economic capacity, or you can say the purchasing power. A better word for it will be purchasing power. Ability, you can refer as purchasing power. So, Apple company will talk to those people and try to know their preferences who not only desire to buy an Apple product but also have that economic capacity or the purchasing power to actually buy that product. Now, we will go towards the features of demand. Features. The most important features is about the effective demand that I was talking about. Demand is called effective demand because what we are talking about is effective demand, the demand which will actually have an impact. So that is why that is known as effective demand. Desire, if you only wish for it, it is not sufficient. It should be backed with some purchasing power as well. Second is demand should be at a certain price. If we do not know what the price is, it is very difficult to determine the demand for that particular commodity. So, price is a factor on which the demand always depends, and demand, lastly, is a flow concept. Demand of any commodity will not be static at every point of time. It's a flow concept. It will keep on changing, and demand for anything will keep on rising or falling depending upon what kind of a product it is. Now, once you've understood those basic features of demand, we will be moving towards the type of demand, the types. First type is joint demand. Joint demand, the demand is said to be joint when the demand of two commodities is needed to satisfy one need, something that we will need together. So there are two products and we need both of them together. In other words, joint demand is also called complementary goods because they complement each other. You can't use one of them instead of the other. So they are demanded jointly. So we can say that two or more commodities, at least two, demanded jointly. So you need both of them simultaneously. If we take an example, I can tell you that for an example, pen and ink. If you demand for pen, you will automatically demand for ink because you're buying pen for the ink actually. Or you cannot do anything with the ink if you don't have a pen to put it in. So that is why they are demanded jointly. So that is why they complement each other. These are also known as complementary goods. And because they complement each other, you cannot use one without the other. Their demands are called joint demands. Later, I'm going to tell you how a demand of any commodity affects the other or vice versa. Next type of demand that we're going to talk about is composite demand. Composite demand, if a particular good or service are demanded and can be put to several use, then that is known as a composite demand. So it is basically for goods put to several use. To several uses. So over here we have to see how many uses it can be put to and which are the more vital than the others. So these things are known as composite demand. Example, you can talk about water because they are needed for the basic usage as well as for hydroelectricity production. We can take an example of milk, which is used for daily consumption, for babies, for the normal adults. Also, milk products are used. So, example wise, a nice example would be milk because it can be put to a multiple uses. Now, number three type of demand is derived demand. Derived demands are when a commodity is demanded for the satisfaction of another commodity, then that is known as derived demand. So it is basically demanded demanded for satisfaction of another commodity. The best example will be brick or steel. These things will be best example. You see, individually we would never demand for bricks because we do not need bricks. We actually need the house to be built, and for building the house, we need bricks. So for building house, we would need bricks. So if I say directly, we do not demand for brick. What we demand for are houses. Because we demand for houses, we have to automatically demand for brick. Because to make houses, we need brick. So that is why the demand for brick is a derived demand. These are derived by the demand for houses. Now, the next type of example, the type is individual demand or market demand. It is not basically a type, you can say, but this is something that we have to deal with. So we will write that individual demand and or market demand and market demand. So these goes together. Individual demand is nothing but the demand of a certain commodity by a single person, a single individual. And market demand means the goods that are actually demanded by a group of people in a certain place at a certain point of time. So that is a market demand. Like if you demand for X, then that is an individual demand. If number of people in a locality are demanding for X, then that becomes a market demand. Now the next type is ex ante and ex post demand. Basically, ex ante, you can call it as a planned demand. So the amount of goods that consumer wants to or plans to purchase, that is basically ex ante. So ex ante is something that is planned demand, you can say. People plan for it and then go for it, like they buy it. And exposed is something amount of goods that the consumer actually purchases. So at some point of time, whatever we plan for, it's not necessary that we will buy it. So ex ante is something that we have planned to, for some reason we may not be able to buy it, or at some point of time we may buy it. So in any way, if I've planned for it, then that becomes my ex ante demand. Next post is my actual demand, something that will actually count because I have actually made the purchase. So these are the basic types of demand.